Hyper attacking. Yeah, hyper, hyper, hyper. Normal, 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 hyper. Welcome back to another edition of Let's Dev with Greg, the video series where I make a game with the lovely help of you people on YouTube and in the interwebs. Tonight we're going to be focusing on our player, this guy right here. But first, I wanted to answer a couple questions you guys had from the first video. Two big questions that that I got a lot of questions about was the one, how much of this stuff did I make versus stuff that Unity has and things like that. Well, I made pretty much all of it. All of the art is mine. All of the game functionality I've created. The only thing I'm really using from third parties, or Unity obviously is the engine itself. There is a plugin called In Control, which is a phenomenal a input manager plugin, because cross-platform input devices for controllers or keyboards, stuff like that, can be a nightmare to get working correctly. Luckily, In Control really helps out a lot with that. Dipping my toe into that type of stuff, but for now, just know that it's a plugin that really helps with that type of stuff. So that's one thing I'm using. I showed you the Auto Snapper plugin last episode. I'm also using that, but basically everything that I'm using from a third party is just tools to help us make custom content. That's the goal here, because we want to do this from scratch. So all of these are just small art files that I'm keeping here in this art folder. You can see these are just Photoshop files. I keep them as PSDs. They can so we can maintain their editability. So if we wanted to go ahead and open up Black Knight, it's going to just open up Photoshop. You can see it's a 16 by 16 file. We're zooming into 3200 here, and you can see, this is the real estate we're working with here. We've got, the shield, the sword, his body. This is just pixels. The cool thing about that is that it's really small, which means that it's pretty efficient. And then we can scale up this because we have our filter mode set to point filtering. Without getting too complicated, point filtering is good for pixel stuff, whereas if you were taking like a larger image and didn't want like aliasing and like weird artifacting on the edges, you'd set this to bilinear or trilinear. Anyway, I wanted to talk about... Oh, sorry, one last thing. The other question that people were asking me was, do I plan to stream these things and then, make the, live and then make the videos later? I'm totally open to doing that. Let me know in the comments of these videos, or you can just message me if I get enough support for streaming. I've never streamed anything before, so that's something I'd have to figure out. But can't be too hard, right? So yeah, just let me know if that's something you guys really want to see. And if it is, I will strongly consider it. For now, I just want to get us caught up on the game as it stands and where we are. So okay, without further ado, let's jump in to the player. You can see that the player here in our hierarchy is blue, which means it's a prefab. Talked a little bit about prefabs before, but so when you select it, in our inspector, we'll see everything that's on. All these are components that are on our game object here, the player. So we'll just run through these real quick, and then some of them will go into more in depth. So the transform, that's just for all game objects. It tells you the space of it in the world, where it is. Not significant to the player. Everything has these. Sprite render is the art component, how it renders the image. Okay, now we get to the good stuff. We have our player character controller. This is a custom C# script um, that holds pretty much everything that has to do with moving our player around, controlling our guy, right? Then we have the player script, which uh, doesn't control our guy, but holds the stats for our guy. So things like health, if he can move or not, being stunned, his attack speed, is he blocking, is he facing right, is he invulnerable, that type of stuff. Um, and this script would get propagated with more things if we were to uh, add more things. Okay, just want to touch on these final three components here. The rigid body, um, that is a Unity component that we need in order to get 2D physics going properly. We don't have to really worry about it too much since it's already set up. Um, we've frozen the rotation, so we're not kind of, in game, we're not going like, this with the physics. Um, we, there's some technical things that aren't super important. Let's just close that. Okay, the circle collider. You can see this is the circle collider, and it's set to not be a trigger. This is important because I want to touch a little bit on this. That since it's not a trigger, it will collide with other things that are not triggers. So that was what I was showing you before. So this thing has this corner has a box collider on it. So you see like our circle collider will collide with the box collider. That way we don't fall down. Okay. And then the animator is the component that controls all the character animations. I'll touch on that later in this video. So underneath our player, we've got a ground check, which is something that basically allows us to see if we're grounded or not. Basically, we draw a circle around this transform right here. See how it's at its feet? In the code, we draw a circle and see if it's colliding with anything that we think is ground. Now, how we do that is back on the player here, we have a what is ground, right? And that's a layer mask. A layer mask is basically like a selectable amount of layers that we've defined in our game. So up here, we can define a bunch of layers. So you can, we have a lot of different layers here. One of them is ground. And now notice on all our different pieces here, up in our layer, this is ground. So if we wanted something to be ground, we would layer it as ground. That's pretty simple, right? I feel like that's pretty simple. So, this for example is a gravity lift. That is not labeled as ground. And since what is ground is just grounds and turrets, that means we can walk on grounds and turrets. Pretty simple. That will have to do with whether or not we can jump and double jump, because you don't want us just to be able to jump infinitely. We need to check to see if we become grounded again. So okay, that's fun. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else we got more to talk about here. Okay. So at this point, I'm just gonna show you. I'm gonna play the game. Let's see. And we're just gonna mute that audio. I'm going to show you what our player can do in a second. Here we go. Sometimes the first load in a while takes a little bit. Okay, here we go. So, Um, our player can do a couple things, right? We can go left and right. We can jump. We can double jump. We can attack. Pretty simple stuff. We can also sprint. We can also sprint and attack. Kind of, oh boy, well, death. Um, but you can kind of see that's different from a regular attack, right? Bang! Yeah, yeah, yeah. You kind of like a leap forward. So that's when you attack while you're holding sprint, right? You can also do that while we're in the air, but that will cause a different effect than our forward attack. When our forward sprint attack, let's call them hypers because I think I called them that in the code. Um, Hyper attacking, yeah, hyper, hyper, hyper. Normal, 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 hyper, hyper. And you can see from an artistic perspective, I chose to go with the hyper. You're like he's all white, and kind of like you know full of energy and that type of thing. Whereas like the normal attack, like he's attacking, but he's kind of maintaining uh, you know, uh, his form per se. Whereas he kind of goes into uh, Super Saiyan mode when you're in hypers. So, and then the last thing you can do is block. Block, you just hold the block button, and there we go, and we're blocking. Yay. Blocking can, I'm sure you guessed, but blocking can block projectiles and stuff. Bang, block. All right, and then if we don't block it, we die. Sweet. Okay, so obviously attacking kills stuff. And one more cool thing to note is that when you down attack, it resets your double jump, and you kind of get like it kind of bumps you up a little bit. So like, let me show you what I mean. So like, if we were to just attack this guy normally, we kill him and we fall to the ground. But let's say we wanted to hyper attack down attack him. Well, let's do that. Oh, okay. Well, let's do bang. See how we kind of like jumped up a little bit there? I didn't even jump again. That was just the force applied on our character once we killed him. So let's do it. Bang. And now we can do these cool like because that if I was not terrible, you can do these like cool. You can see how you can kind of create like cool puzzles with floating enemies like that because now you can kind of bounce off of them, and you can maybe make some really interesting platforming challenges that could be all of a sudden you combine them with things like those projectiles, and as you can see, kind of hard because I didn't quite um, you know didn't I died a couple times there. So now that you guys have seen a little bit about what the guy can do, let's just go into the code. I know code is scary, but we're gonna go into it anyway to show you a little bit about how this works. And like I don't think we need to go super in depth because it would take a long time. But let's just play around a little bit. Okay, so fair warning, I am not a coder. I'm totally learning as we go. I'm like probably 4 months ahead of teaching I'm not whatever we're doing here. So um, again, if you are a programmer who is watching this and notice that I'm doing something horribly inefficient or just flat out wrong, again, I would super love it if you'd let me know, and preferably not in a dickish way, uh, and that way I can fix it, or you know, you can suggest a better way to do it would be helpful. Okay, but see here, so here we go. Um, so we're in our player character controller C# script, and first of all, let's go over our variables. This is one thing I kind of neglected to mention in our uh, while I was talking about this within code, you can specify public variables, which are really nice because um, that means you can maintain that editability without going back into the code. So you can see see these public variables, walk speed, run speed, jump force, downward attack force, all this stuff, those are public variables that we have defined inside our C# script. Here they are right here. That's really cool. Um, then we have a bunch of other variables like walking, running, hyper. Those are all set to false. We would set those to true at various points in the code to do different checks for things like if what type of animation should be playing, or if we should be invulnerable. When we're doing a hyper attack, we don't want you to get killed by like an enemy if you're something like that. Okay. And then again, these are more private variable, or sorry, these are public variables, but we don't want to see them in the inspector. That's why we have this hide in inspector here. All right, I might do a little bit of like cutting just as a forewarning because I don't have a script while I'm doing this. So if I end up making a super boring part, I might just cut that. And so if you see little blips in the video, that's what I'm doing. You didn't miss anything. It's just me trying to figure shit out. Okay, so you can see we have two enumerators, which are coroutines, which get called at various times. Basically, this is our attack animation and our hyper attack animation. So what it will do is, let's see, let's find where we call. Let's just find where we call this. Okay, sweet. So this is our melee attack. It's saying if our player actions dot attack dot was pressed, and just by the way, these right here, player actions, that's what the in control stuff is. I've already set that up in control. That way, so let me see if I can explain this in an intelligent way. The old way to do it, which is not as efficient, is to say like if I press the Z button, do my attack. But now, what in control does, which is super helpful, is okay, I'm going to define what a player attack means in input. So like it could be Z if we're using a keyboard, it could be the A button if we're using a Xbox controller, whatever the PS4 controller uses. It's been a while since I've used PS4 controller, but whatever the bottom equivalent is, or if we were, you can define different inputs for that action. That way, in our code, we only have to call attack. So if we are attacking, or if we call attack, press attack, and we're not already attacking, then we're gonna do this stuff in here. Now, if we're grounded, like I talked about earlier, and where hyper is true, so that means we're holding down our hyper key, which would be, if we're on a keyboard, it was shift. It's left trigger on the controller, and we're running. So if all of these things are true, we're going to hyper attack. And then, which is again what I showed you earlier, if we're grounded or we're not hypering, then we're going to do a regular attack. So I hope that makes sense. Like it kind of makes sense in my mind. It clearly makes sense in the computer's mind. Otherwise, it wouldn't be doing it. And if this stuff isn't true, then it's gonna do. That's what this else statement is saying. It's like if it's gonna do this, else do this stuff. So that's kind of the type of things that are happening in the player character controller. So like similar things would happen for jumping and blocking and those types of things. We don't have to go super in depth with it, because again, this script took me a while to even just create over time. So Uh, but yeah, so I think we can probably move on. Let me know again. I'm just kind of figuring this out. So let me know if you guys want more technical stuff, or if you want, just kind of overview stuff and like ideas of flow and that type of stuff. This can be whatever we want it to be. I'm just kind of talking. So now that's the character controller. Let's move into the player. Um, the player, this is kind of like the more cool part to me, um, because it controls a lot of, you know, more stuff that's inherent to the player itself, not just how we move it. So, for instance, um, like his like damaging stuff and like handling death and like, oh, what happens when we collide with a projectile? What happens when we collide with a hazard? What happens when we collide with uh, something that is an enemy? um, that type of stuff. So basically how I've set it up is, and this is the way that was envisioning the game being like a very fast, like, oh, everything dies in like one shot. Like I set it up so that his health is 1, and then everything does 9,999 damage to him. And if he has less than 0 health, you die. So obviously everything will kill him in one shot. Um, you know, and that's up for debate. We could change stuff where he could take multiple hits, but that's kind of how I've set it up for now. Um, and I was, that's kind of, I was thinking of like we have these fast-paced levels, and you'd be moving around, and like it'd be very kind of like Super Meat Boy. You'd probably be dying a lot, but you're gonna get right back in there, that type of thing. Um, so yeah, all right. So yeah, this is another cool thing to talk about. So like on trigger enter, that's a function. So I talked about colliders before, um, and if they are a trigger or not. Now, okay, these are super important because a trigger basically means that you can like instead of colliding, you'll go through it, but it will register that you are going through it. So, for example, our gravity lift. Let's see if we can find this. Okay, gravity lift. Uh, this is a trigger. So if we were to walk through this trigger, which I'll do for you just to illustrate. Now that like this is registering that we've like that's a trigger enter. Entering the trigger. Right there. And then while we're in it, we're registering that we're staying in it. And then when we leave it, we register that we've exited it. Exited it. Exited it. Yes. Yes. So know that those things are happening with those triggers. And so now we're saying like, okay, when we enter something, when this enters a trigger, whatever this is connected to, in our case, it's connected to the player, and it collides with something. This is what it's colliding with. Um, if the other's tag is a projectile, uh, and so when we collide with like a bullet, a projectile, right? Those things that the cannons are shooting. If we're blocking, then we want to block the hit and then stop this, which means we won't run the rest of this. If we are else, which means if we're not blocking and we get hit by if we enter a projectile, damage the player 9,999 health, in which case we would die, right? Um, so right, we can block projectiles. Okay, cool. We cannot block hazards. So that's like those spiky traps or water or whatever else we want to be hazards. We can't block those. So we don't run the is blocking on that. It just damages the player. Enemies are a little bit more complicated, but it's the same type of idea. Instead of having a tag, we look for the component of an enemy. And if if it is an enemy, then um, let's see. I recently changed this, so I need to figure out what this is. Oh, okay, right. So the enemies can be stunned. So if an enemy is stunned, or if our player is temporarily invulnerable, then when we collide with the enemy, remember this is all within this collision, then we won't do anything. If we're blocking, then uh, we'll block the hit, and we'll like kind of shove, uh, we'll throw the enemy off of us a little bit. So let me show you what that, like this part right here. So like we're gonna block the hit. If we're blocking and we come in contact with an enemy, um, we'll block the hit and like throw the guy off of us. So that can be seen on the knights. Bang. See how he kind of like bang, bang. Fuck you. All right. Pretty cool, right? Um, so yeah, so that's what that does. If none of this is happening, we die. So you can kind of see that's all within the player script. Um, so that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. Um, there's a little bit more in here. Again, if you want more technical stuff, we can do it. But it's just kind of giving you the basis for what types of stuff are in these files, um, and that sort of thing. I wanted to show you, before we get too deep in, too long of an episode, I wanted to show you some animations, because honestly, that's my favorite part of this whole thing. Animation is super cool, especially with pixel animation. I've just gotten into it, like basically for this project, and it's really fun. So, this is a little crazy, but in Unity we have the Animator, and what we have here is this big web of stuff. Basically, stuff is a bad way of describing it. It's more like these are all animation sets, because we can only be playing like one animation at a time. So you can see we're going to start, this orange one means we're starting and we're just idling, right? Then you can see all, if you can read along here, pretty much all of our states have some sort of death that has an animation. Teleport animation. If we're walking, we're doing this animation. If we're running, we're doing this animation. Uh, if we're attacking, a hyper, all these stuff have animations associated with it and transitions associated with it. So, for example, when we are, let's see, what's a good example? Let's just take death, right? From any state, we can go to the death animation. No matter what we're in here, this is what that any state does. And that will be triggered. So if you click on a transition, it becomes blue, like this. We can see in our handy dandy inspector the conditions of that transition, which is death. You can set parameters over here on the left, and then if we are in that state, again, this is any state, so in any state, if we trigger the death parameter, which is a trigger, if that gets triggered, we're going to trigger from any state to death. Death is going to play, and then once death would continue, it would remain in this state until we play the respawn condition. So let's just hop right back to the code. You can see iEnumerator, kill player, right? So when this coroutine gets called, player animator dot set trigger death. That's referring to this animator. It's calling this trigger death, bang, it would do that. And since this is in the any state, it's going to throw us into our death and then back into our idle once we respawn. That's pretty simple. That's like a simpler case. There's a lot more going on with this, obviously. As you can see, there's like, look at how many freaking arrows there are here. Um, but and I probably could have done like a better job like organizing this web, but it is at the very least not a web of lies. It does everything that it says it does. So that's kind of nice. Let's just put that back to there. Okay. But that's not even the coolest part of animation. The coolest part is actually doing the art and like setting up the animation. So if you press Control 6, that brings up the animation window. Not to be confused with the Animator window, which controls the animations. The animations are just the animations. So you can see we have all of our different animations here. Let's go back to our scene view so we can see our guy in action. So you can see this is our animation view. We're looking at our idle, and we can just play it, and it'll just, there you go, loop, boom, 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 boom. All right, awesome. What that is doing is we have the player sprite renderer, right? That's that thing I was talking about earlier. That's right here. The nice thing is when we're recording, it shows you the types of stuff that you're recording in the animation. So you can change all manner of things within an animation, and it would record it. It's a very powerful tool in Unity, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. And that's nice. For our purposes, we're basically just switching out sprites. But that's good too. That's very, very powerful and, works really well. Let's see. I want to make this down here so we can see. Okay, great. So you can see that, see how this is changing over here? 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. It's changing the image out. Okay, that's a super simple example. Let's do something more fun. Attack. Hit. Nice. Hit. 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 All right. What this is doing basically is, if you remember, we have this forward attack and bottom attack game objects within our player. They're turned off by default. But you can see right there, halfway through our attack, we turn that on, and our attack hitbox is kind of big because we don't want to cheat. We don't want the player to feel cheated, so we give them a little extra. So it's kind of cool. Like it hits a little bit, just kind of in a whirlwind around you. So it kind of gives you a little leeway. Bang, and then at the end we turn it back off, right? And in the middle we're swapping out our sprite renderer, right? We've got air attack 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I guess that's it. So 0 through 4. Pew! Pretty interesting. Our run, boom, boom. They're all kind of similar concepts, but sprint, but you kind of just see that the death is kind of a long one. He kind of poofs, and then you get your little skull, and it's like, hey, you fucking died. The gravity lift's kind of cool. Like you go through this gravity lift and you jump, and it makes you like jump super high, and it's like, and then you kind of like transform into this like ball of hyper energy, and then kind of transform back to your normal self in your jump state. The teleport is like a similar thing where you transform in this purple ball of energy, and then there you are. Pew! We got blocks, so like when you're blocking, you kind of doing this like he's looking, and then when you block a hit, it kind of goes bang, like bang, it looks cool and it's fun. Um, hyper attacking. You can see you got the white stuff up there. The down attack. Uh, he kind of like goes into this like hyper downward thing and it looks really cool. So you can see what I mean. Like you can get really into this type of stuff, and it's a whole lot of fun to make the art for. It's a whole lot of fun to put together, and the validation you get when you see it all come together with the controller and you're playing, and it's that's why games are so fun, and so fun to make. So yeah, all right. I mean, wow, 36 minutes. Okay, we'll wrap this up shortly. I was just, really wanted to show you guys freaking animations because animations are super cool. All right. I'm going through my list here of stuff I wanted to talk about. I'm pretty sure I did everything. Um, let's see. Next time, I would like to go a little bit over um, parallaxing backgrounds, so tune in for that. The game manager and some of the enemies, and we'll figure it out from there. But yeah. So as always, if you like the series, subscribe. Share this stuff with your friends or other people who might be interested in games, and just stay stay game deving and stuff like that. So, signing off. This has been Let's Dev with Greg. I had a really good time. This is a Friday night for me.